All right, let's get this out of the way. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's United Policyholders Roadmap to Recovery Program webinar. We're going to be talking today about the topic of buying instead of rebuilding a replacement home after a wildfire in California. We'll be covering navigating the decision-making and insurance claim process. My name is Amy Bach, and I'm the Executive Director of United Policyholders, and I'm joined today by Sandy Watts, Project Coordinator, who's got a little housekeeping message for you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just wanted to go through a few things about today's webinar. If you've joined me for the WhatsApp webinars, it's not going to be quite as many question and answers. Hopefully we will get your questions answered in the bulk of the presentation, but we do have a pretty big presentation today. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in the Q&A box, and we will monitor that. If we can answer it and we're right in the right spot, we'll answer it while we're going. But if not, we'll consolidate the questions and answer what we can at the end, given how much time we have. So thank you.
Okay, first of all, there's me. I'm a career insurance consumer advocate, go figure. And if you have been unfortunate enough to have lost your home or to have had a serious wildfire loss, you may have picked up a copy of what we call the Little Yellow Book. I'm one of the authors of that book, and I have been going to bat for insurance buyers and advocating for insurance fairness since the 80s. I'm joined here by Sandy Watts, who, okay, any minute now, there we go, who is our project coordinator. Excuse me. Our project coordinator, she's got 30 plus years of experience in insurance claims and claims management. She also has her license to be a public adjuster, although she is not acting as one. She recently was appointed to the Department of Insurance Curriculum Board and has extensive experience in the nuts and bolts of property damage restoration and insurance claims. For those of you who don't know, we are United Policyholders is what's called a 501c3. That means we're a nonprofit. We say we're not for profit, not for sale. We don't take funding from insurance companies, so we can have an independent voice, but we have a lot of expertise in insurance. We are a voice and an information resource for insurance consumers in all 50 states. We have been around since 1991, so we have a lot of experience in insurance and disaster recovery. Obviously, in California, we've had a lot of experience, unfortunately, with wildfires. We have a volunteer corps of people who've been through disasters, and then we have professional volunteers that contribute to all the information that you'll find at our website. A little bit of fine print. This workshop is intended to be general guidance only, not legal advice. And we don't endorse or warrant any of the sponsors listed on our website. But we do, of course, work very hard to get information out to you that is accurate and useful. So we're talking today about a decision process when you have lost your home, the decision whether you are going to replace it by going through the construction process, hiring an architect, or just building off of the plans that you had originally, if you have those plans, or deciding whether it's better for you and your household just to buy a new home somewhere else, buy a replacement home somewhere else. And so certainly I expect most of you have lost your homes a while ago, and you're already you've been thinking about this for a while. But if you are just lost a home, please accept our condolences. We certainly are glad that you're with us, and we're here to try to ease your path on the road to recovery. So obviously it's challenging, to be in the position that you are, where this is a major life decision for anyone, and let alone a decision to be made when you're not at your emotional strongest, or maybe even you're in the best health. But so it's a challenging process, and so we understand that. We have worked with many people who've had to face these decision points, and so we're just going to share with you some of the data points that people have used to make that decision, some of the considerations, and then some of the practical realities of buying a replacement home instead of rebuilding. Like everything else on the road to recovery, it's a process. Very often, if you're standing in the ruins of what was your home, it's really hard to imagine, the film going backwards, like it does sometimes on TV ads, and imagine your house back again. It's all very painful. And so for some people, the decision to rebuild versus buy takes a while, because you initially, after a loss, you don't generally sleep very well. You're not at your sharpest mentally. Plus, it's really hard to imagine your neighborhood looking good again and looking green again. And, but we can tell you from our many years of experience that the earth is resilient and we are resilient. And so whichever way you go, that's fine. But making that decision can take a while, because it's, your state of mind may change, and your finances may change as well. So what are some of the decision points? Do you rebuild? Do you buy a replacement home? Do you buy a home in California? Do you want to move out of the state? So these are decisions that are hard to make quickly, because a lot of, people are very attached to their community, their neighborhood. It's hard to imagine leaving. Some people feel like they just can't stay. It's too painful. But again, your feelings may change over time. And you do have, there's to a certain extent, the clock is ticking with regard to your insurance, and you do have to continue to maintain forward momentum as much as you can. And so, when you're looking at what can you afford, for a lot of people, 2/3 of the people that our organization works with find themselves underinsured, particularly on their dwelling. And that makes it even more challenging to decide, if you can't afford to rebuild the house that you had, do you want to build a smaller house, a less expensive house, or do you just want to take that money and put it into a new home? And if you did want to replace your home and you don't have enough insurance, where would you get the additional funds? Would you take out a loan? Would you cash in some of your retirement? Would you use your savings? Would you take an SBA loan? Those are all financial decisions. And those are some of the decisions you're facing. And we're going to walk through some of the sources of help that you can find to make those decisions. And I'll tell you that because California is one of the only states in the country that has written into our law the right to take your insurance funds, all of the funds that would have been available to you if you did rebuild, and use those funds to buy. Since we're the only state, California's the only state that expressly gives you that right in our laws. A lot of insurance adjusters are really not that familiar with the rules, because if they've been working in another state, they don't know that right even exists in California. So unfortunately, sometimes you've got to educate your adjuster, and that's what United Policyholders is here for, to educate you so that you can assert your rights, even if your adjuster doesn't know all the rules. And of course they should, but in reality, sometimes they don't. So remember, not all your decisions are financial in this context. Some of it's emotional, as far as whether you want to stay in your community or not. Always your first place, though, in making the decision is to figure out how much insurance money is available to you. Know your insurance proceeds. And then also to figure out what it would cost if you were to rebuild, because in insurance lingo, that is the measure of indemnity. That means the amount of money that the insurance company owes you is to put you back where you were before the loss. And so it's, even if you're not going to rebuild the house that you had, you're thinking either you want to rebuild something different or you want to buy. No matter what path you want to take, you're going to be limited to the insurance funds that you'd be entitled to if you did rebuild what you had, like, kind, and quality. And that can cause a lot of tension because a lot of people don't want to go through the hassle of a fictitious math, meaning like, I know I'm not going to build that house. Why do I have to go through the motions of figuring out what it would cost if I did that? Well, the answer is because that's how you figure out how much your insurance company owes you. And that's how you make that forward momentum on your road to recovery. You've got to know how much insurance money you have, and then you've got to get a rebuild quote. And then there are, of course, some other economic considerations with regard to taxes. We recommend that you get some advice from a tax person on what's the tax difference going to be for your property taxes and even with your income from rebuilding versus buying. So you're thinking about downsizing, moving, and what and again, figuring out what you'd be entitled to if you did put back this very same house that you had. So again, these are sources of where you might find additional funds, savings. You might use some of your contents insurance money toward your rebuild or your purchase. You might tap into some of your savings, get a loan, or you might put in an income producing unit as part of your rebuild, or an accessory dwelling unit on your property that might bring in some income that would help you make the math work. So these decisions, how is this going to affect the rest of your financial future? A lot of people, when they're trying to decide to buy versus rebuild, they're thinking about, well, maybe I didn't need such a big house. My kids are out of the house. We're rattling around. Now we want to build something smaller, but we don't want to accept less money from our insurance company because we've built smaller. So, maybe that's a reason to buy instead. But again, these are decisions that you want to make thoughtfully. You don't want to take away money from your kids' college fund or your retirement if you can avoid that. And you always want to keep an eye on your financial health as you're making this decision. Where are you in life? Again, are your kids still with you? That makes a difference. Who else lives with you? Who do you support? And are you rebuilding to stay in the area permanently, or are you thinking that you are going to leave the area in retirement anyway? Will your neighbor's decision have an impact on your decision to stay or relocate? If your neighbor isn't rebuilding, that may affect your decision. If your neighbor is rebuilding and you don't like your neighbor, well, that might affect your decision too. How committed are you to remaining in your same neighborhood? And again, we know that neighborhoods come back, but it is very hard to really see that when you are in the early stages of your loss. Can you afford to rebuild? So were you properly insured? What if you weren't? What's the balance that you owe on your mortgage? And then what would you be able to buy with your insurance money? How far away would you need to move to get something equivalent? Those of us who live in California, property values have been increasing. And so, lots of times the house that you had, you wouldn't be able to afford to buy it now. So those affect your decisions. Could you refinance? And then, excuse me, my computer's getting ahead of me here. All right, let's get this out of the way. There. Should you consider accepting the insurance money as a cash out and just rent? But that's a tricky one to be made whole if you do that. Okay. You should talk to a CPA about the tax implications of buying versus rebuilding. And there are CPAs. The best CPA to talk to is one who has had clients in the past who have lost a home. So it's called casualty loss tax rule. So you want to get with a CPA that has had a client or two in your situation, so they have some familiarity with the tax code. So your starting point you've decided to buy, I'm going to turn it over to my fabulous colleague, Sandy Watts, to walk you through some of the details of buying instead of rebuilding. Sandy, take it away.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, so this part of our webinar is going to talk about assuming that you have decided to buy a house instead of rebuilding. We've done some other webinars on rebuilding, and we are happy to send you a link to one of those if you'd like that. This is all going to assume that you've chosen to buy. So let's talk about where to start. If you've been to my WhatsApp webinars, you've seen this slide before, but really getting to the buying process is really almost identical to the rebuilding process in your first steps. And if you look at that the upper right hand part of the slide there, the most important thing is knowing how much it would cost to rebuild the house that you lost, okay, up to your policy limits, and getting an agreement with your insurer on how much that amount is. You really can't move forward very well without this. I see a lot of carriers sending people, they get their ACV payment, and then the carrier, say they've been paid 70% of their policy limits. The carrier says, well, when you buy your house, send us the closing documents, and we will, we'll pay you the rest as applicable. You can get yourself into some real issues with that. So you want to make sure that you come to an agreement on the total amount they will pay. That includes a code bid. We have a section on talking about code upgrade coverage. But in almost every case, unless you've been paid your full policy limits, in which case you're probably not here, but you're going to need your own estimate and a code estimate to move forward and get that agreement. Okay, so here's the kicker, 2051.5. This was passed, updated in September of 2018, so right before the Camp Fire. I recognize most of you from the Camp Fire, so if you've been with us before, you've seen this slide before, and Amy mentioned it, but what they owe you is the cost to repair or rebuild the house you lost. Okay, we're just talking about homes in this webinar. So that's what they owe you, okay, up to your policy limit. Okay, so that's why it's important to know the amount. Go ahead. So what this means, okay? We've already said it, the home you lost plus code upgrades up to the policy limit. In most cases, you'll need an estimate. Got ahead of myself there. We do, if you guys are interested in, if you're not to this point yet and you're looking at buying a house, let us know. You can write to us at info@uphelp.org, and we can send you a link to a webinar that goes through in great detail how to take your insurance company estimate and compare it with your contractor's estimate to get to an agreement on how much they owe you. Some of the things that we see, so the insurance company in most cases have given you an estimate, many pages long, very confusing. And then people get their own estimate, and then the insurance company says something along the lines of, yeah, it's too high, or something like that. Don't get caught in that trap. There's some rules, and we'll get to those about what they need to do if you turn in an estimate. But the first thing you need to do is make sure that their estimate, without regard for the amount of money, make sure that their estimate is correct. Make sure, and that webinar that we did previously will go through that. But in essence, it's making sure that, your bedrooms are the right size, your floor coverings are correct, the right number of windows, right number of square footage. And the reason for that is because if you get a contractor's estimate and it's accurate and theirs isn't accurate, they're impossible to compare. So you need to start with theirs, get your own, compare. A lot of times sitting down, if you can, with an adjuster and your contractor can be helpful. Make sure that your contractor can, stand behind their numbers, that they have some subcontract bids, and ask for a trade summary breakdown from your adjuster. that lists, it says like appliances, roofing, insulation, drywall, all that. And it's just a breakdown by each trade. And that can help your contractor. Your contractor can look at that and they can look and see the areas where you have a big difference, and you can work on those big areas first. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so this is one of the big issues. Your insurance company is going to pay you actual cash value. So most of you are already to a place where you understand actual cash value at your point is replacement cost less depreciation, okay? Your insurance company holds that depreciation until you actually spend the money, okay? So in most cases, when you're going to buy a home, you have to spend over the amount of your actual cash value in order to sort of tap into those replacement cost benefits and get that withheld depreciation released, okay? There's some big issues with this, and we're going to hit the challenges further on, but that's the main idea between the replacement costs. They pay you ACV, you collect it later. Okay, we go straight into challenges. So here are the challenges. I take most of the consumer questions that come to UP, and these are the 5 that I am seeing most often. And a lot of you, I see you signed up that I've talked to you personally. So thanks for joining us, and hopefully this will dig in a little deeper. These are the ones. So the first one I've already kind of talked about, and that's the difference between the insurance company's estimate and the contractor's estimate. Okay, I have a little slide later that's going to show you how to deal with that a little bit. Like kind and quality. So if your insurance adjuster has told you that you have to either rebuild your house exactly like it was, or you have to find a replacement house that's like kind and quality, say same square footage, same amenities, let me know, okay? Because that is something that we've seen. It's very easy to counter. It is not true. So the like, and we can get into that further. Soft costs and supervision, a lot of adjusters are knocking those out of estimates. Code upgrade coverage, we'll talk about, and land value deduction, we'll talk about. Go ahead. Oops. Okay, so the first one, I did touch on this a little bit earlier, but what you do, if you've adjusted their estimate so that it's correct in terms of what you lost, okay, and you have a contractor's estimate that also reflects what you lost, okay, versus what you want. You can get what you want later, but you need it for what you lost. And you're still in a position where the insurance company's estimate is lower than your contractor's estimate. Your adjuster has a duty under the California Fair Claims Settlement Practices regulations to adjust the estimates, okay? So if you got something back that says, your contractor's estimate's too high, or we can't do this, or we can't do that, I'm going to show you where to find it in the regulations, and you can go back and say, look, you're required under the regs to provide me an adjustment of the estimates, and they need to go line by line, okay? And if there are areas where they're not allowing something, technically they have to give you the reason. That's a denial. That's a partial denial. So if they say, we're not paying you for, X, and you had it, then they owe you a denial on that, okay? So you really need to kind of force them to do this. Now, the only caveat I'm going to have, your contractor does not have to provide the estimate in the same format that your insurance company provided. So most of the insurance companies use Xactimate. It's just an estimating software. Some contractors use them if they've done insurance work. Most don't. You do not have to turn an estimate in that's in the same form. Your adjuster has to deal with it. But it also can't be, replace one house, $300,000. It has to be reasonably broken down so that the adjuster can look at, what your contractor is charging and make a comparison. Okay, so the easiest way to do that, like I said before, is by trade. Okay, roofing, flooring, framing, and so forth. Okay. If there's still an impasse, so say your roofer, your contractor's bid for your roof is $30,000 and their insurance company's estimate for your roof is $20,000. They can't just say your roof is too high. You need to come up with a plan to deal with it. Sometimes it will fall to you to have like a subcontractor, like a local roofer in the area, or to give an estimate and turn it into to the adjuster and do that, so that they can adjust it. They have to justify what they're paying, and they can't just blindly say that the exactament pricing is correct, because it's not always correct. Okay, and then know your rights. The next slide is going to show you where, and it's going to look like a lot, so get ready for it. I'm sorry. This is on the Department of Insurance website. If you Google California Fair Claims Settlement Practices Act, you'll get it. This is 2695.9D. And I'm sorry that it's so many words on the page, but it's really, really important. And the way that I like to use this is when the adjuster says, you know, yours is too high, I say, okay, under this regulation, which of the two options are you going to do? Okay, and you'll see that there's 3 options here, but I really don't recommend option 2. So what it is, so they've got an estimate. Okay, also, this applies, and if you look, it's kind of hard to see. I guess you can't see my mouse, but if they hire someone, if your adjuster doesn't go out themselves, but they hire a consulting firm or a contractor to do the bid for them, that is considered their estimate. That is not an independent estimate, okay? So if they have a bid and you have a bid and yours is higher, there are 3 options and they're listed right there. First one, pay the difference between their estimate and your estimate. That is obviously our number 1 choice. Number 2, which we don't recommend, but if you get into a corner and you don't want to deal with it, you can. It's your right to invoke this one. If it's requested by the claimant, that's you. Have them provide you with the name of at least 1 repair individual or entity that'll make the repairs for the amount of their estimate. And they have to, it says the insurer shall cause the damaged property to be restored. That puts almost all the construction in their hands, if you ask me. And they have to provide a guarantee. So if some of you are backed into a corner, I'd like to talk to you about the pros and cons of that, because I don't really recommend it. The other thing we've seen is, I just talked to somebody who did that, and the insurance company's contractor immediately doubled their bid to the same amount of the other one. So that's some interesting stuff. So the third one, which is the one that's most often used, is reasonably adjust any written estimates prepared by the repair individual or entity of the insured's choice and provide a copy of the adjusted estimate to the claimant. And I mean, hold their feet to the fire for every single, if it doesn't come back to your liking, hold their feet to the fire for every line of the estimate. Okay, I know it's hard, but it's worth it. Frank just asked, and this is right in there. He's found that contractors can't afford to spend the time pricing a home they won't be building. I had to push my insurance to come up with a rebuild cost, and theirs was way off on a cost per square foot. So there are people who, and I'm sorry to say this because I don't believe you guys should have to pay for an estimate, but there are people who are estimators who do this for a living and get their estimates through the insurance company. If you're to a situation where you're going to leave money on the table and you have a bunch of money left in your limits, it is worth it. A lot of them charge about 1.5% of the total estimate amount. And if we're talking, you know, say it costs you $4,000 or $5,000 to have an estimate written, but you get $50,000 or $60,000, you know, a percentage of that getting paid to an estimator is definitely worth it, in my opinion. So, and we do have some people on our site in our get help, find help area that can help you under estimators and contractors. Okay. Okay, like, kind, and quality. Okay, this is, I touched on this a little bit earlier. If your adjuster has, you've looked at a house and your adjuster is saying, oh, well, the house you lost was 2,000 square feet and this house that you're buying, usually in another state, is 3,000 square feet, back up the bus, okay? Like, kind, and quality is used, is in the loss settlement provisions of most insurance policies, and it is used to determine how much they owe you, okay? So they want to estimate what, like, kind, and quality of what you lost. It makes perfect sense. However, as some of you have seen, if you go to another state, your money can go farther, sadly to say, and maybe buy you a little bit bigger home than you could afford in California. There's nowhere in the policy and nowhere in the statute that says that you have to replace your home with like, kind, and quality, okay? So some adjusters misunderstand that concept. I feel like in most cases it's pretty easy to get past. So again, if you get into a situation like that, let us know and we'll give you some talking points to help you with that. Okay. Okay, so this is the big one. I know there's a bunch of you on the line who I have been talking to all day long about this portion of 2051.5C. And this is the part that says you can take your benefits and buy a new house, okay? I've been talking to attorneys. We've been going through this. And if you're having trouble, let us know. There are some class actions forming with respect to the ability to take the code upgrade coverage with you, because that seems to be the biggest sticking point. But this is very clear if you read it, that it says no policy in this state shall contain a provision that limits or denies the payment of the building code upgrade cost. I mean, there it is right there. And it talks later about the measure of indemnity, like Amy talked about earlier. It's the cost to replace the home you lost, including what it would have cost to bring that home up to code, okay? And that money can be put in your purse and taken to the new house and doesn't have anything to do with any code upgrades at the new home, okay? So unfortunately, it looks like Nationwide's gonna have a big fight over this. Sorry, we don't usually name names, but it seems like they're digging in on this. So let us know if that is your issue and we'll try to get you guys all together. Go ahead. Okay, soft costs, okay? So this actually relates to another part of that same code that says you can take your replacement cost with you, okay? So they owe you the cost to replace the home you lost, okay? That includes things like permits, fees, and insurance, architectural, engineering, temporary power, temporary toilets. Those are all parts of the cost of the replacement of your home. And it's our position that they owe you that. So what's happened is historically, so like if you're just a house and your house burns down, these items are a little bit harder to estimate. They're not standard items. They can be estimated, but they're not standard. So historically, the adjusters would say, okay, we're going to leave these items open. When you get your, architectural plans, we'll pay them, up to your limit. And that's fine. So if you're rebuilding and you're rebuilding in paradise, it's okay to leave these as open items. However, some of the insurers are taking the position that if you move and these aren't included in your replacement cost estimate, and that is, in my opinion, incorrect. And they are all part of the rebuild. There's nothing that says they have to be incurred to be paid. So that just know your rights on those, okay?
Sandy, can you give us an example of a soft cost?
Yes. Architectural, engineering, permits, fees. I've seen temporary power, temporary toilets, temporary fencing, things like that. If there's anything on your insurance adjuster's estimate that says open item, question that, okay? And some of the things that's happening is that people don't see them on the estimate. And then they go to replace, they don't even know that they're owed them. And to me, it's a slam dunk, it's a slam dunk that they're owed, because most of the ones I've seen, they're on the estimate. So that to me is the insurer acknowledging that those items are items that are required to rebuild the home. And they just leave them open. It's a big mistake. Okay, this one is also one I've seen, construction supervision. When you have a total loss, a full house to build, construction supervision is super important in the rebuilding. The general contractor either has to supervise it himself or pay someone to supervise. All the subcontractors, I was looking at one the other day, there was something like 70 trades. And think about, HVACs, roofers, flooring, drywallers, framers, all these people, they cannot just show up at a loss and be expected to do the work without somebody pointing them in the right direction. So it's very necessary. It is part of the rebuild cost. And some insurers are not allowing for supervision. I had one write me today saying it's part of overhead and profit. And it's not. So overhead and profit are defined. Overhead are the fixed costs of running a construction company. So that construction company has to pay workers' comp. They have to run their trucks. They have to, their regular insurance. They have maybe some administrative people in the office who are helping them. Those are the fixed costs, their rent for their building. Those are the costs that have to be paid by the contractor regardless of whether they're running a job, okay? Everybody's hyper aware of fixed costs these days with COVID and people not working. That is not supervision. Supervision is an actual hourly job. It is dependent on the actual house that you're building, how much it needs, and so it needs to be added in. Profit is the profit the general contractor makes on the job. So that's something completely different. If any of you are pushing up on this, I do have Exactware has a document that's very specific that talks about the fact that supervision needs to be added into estimates and is not part of overhead and profit. Apparently there's also a code. We're waiting to get clarification on what code that is because I'm not, but let us know also if you're getting pushback on that. Okay, code upgrades, we did touch on this a little bit, just wanted to finalize this because this seems to be the hardest one. This is the code to know. And you guys have, if you've been in my seminar, my webinars, you've seen this 1,000 times. Go to the next slide, please. And okay, what's included in code upgrades? Read your policy because the language does vary and it really only varies into what a code is, what items. But the statute that was passed in September, right before the fires in 2018, is very, very broad, okay? And if you have code upgrade coverage, now not everybody has code upgrade coverage. Some of it's in, some policies have it included in coverage A, some of people don't have it, but most of you have it and you have it as a percentage of your main dwelling cost. So in general, the code upgrade items are things that weren't there before, okay, but need to be added to a new house in order for you to move in, okay? Sprinklers, solar, energy efficiency updates. Somebody sent me one the other day, electric vehicle charging stations in some jurisdictions. So if you're looking to buy a house, you need to get an estimate for all of those code upgrades for your area that would be required if you were rebuilding your house. So if you're rebuilding a house that was built last year, you probably have very few things to add to your house to bring it up to code today because they do it once a year. If your house is built in the 40s or 50s and you hadn't done any remodeling, then you probably have a huge amount of code upgrades that need to be done, okay? That amount up to your code limit can be rolled into the purchase and upgrading of a new house. So you can do it as part of the purchase price. If you want to upgrade your new house, you can do it for that. Like I said, it seems like pretty much all the insurers are on board except Nationwide. If you have another insurer and they're giving you pushback, let me know, and we can send you some information. And this coverage is one that you want to get an agreement on how much, but it is paid as incurred. So one of the really important things is when you're buying a house, and we can talk about this after Amy talks about the land value deduction, but when you're buying a house, in general, the amount they're holding, you have to spend it to get it, okay? So if they paid you $300,000 ACV and you have 100 left, you've got to spend into that 100 in order to release it, okay? You have to at least spend, you know, they're not going to give you, if you only spend 350, they're only going to pay you 350. So that's a really important thing to know. You don't get to keep the rest. Sometimes you have to show that the city and county will enforce the codes in order to get payment. Like I said, most of the insurers are far enough along in most of these cases to know what, especially with the Paradise fires, the Butte County is good about listing them, but sometimes, every once in a while, you have to show them, hey, look, these are the codes they're going to enforce. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so you heard me say earlier in the webinar that California is the only state that has, that gives you baked into the written laws in our state, the right to take your insurance money, not rebuild, and use it to buy elsewhere. And I mentioned that some adjusters aren't really not familiar with that. But we also are the only state that requires insurers to pay you everything that they would have owed you if you rebuilt, including extended replacement cost benefits and including code upgrades that would have been required if you did rebuild. Okay, so again, I just want to repeat that California, and you saw the code section, Sandy went through it with you, insurance code 2051.5, it says no policy can basically deprive you of the full benefits you would have been able to collect if you rebuilt. Well, the problem for some insurers is they don't like that. That's one problem. But also that they are saying that it's not clear enough. And some insurers are saying that they don't have to pay those things, extended replacement, code upgrades. The legislature has spoken on the extended replacement, and they're at a little bit, but they haven't spoken about a third issue, the land value. So some insurers want to deduct an amount. If you're going to replace by buying, they want to deduct an amount for the land underneath that house that you want to buy. But we disagree. We don't think they have that right. But because we're the only state that has it, and because it's not that old a law, it's been on the books for about 10 years, maybe a little bit more. But actually not even, it's been more like 7 years when I think about it. There's still a lot of debates going on about, okay, we take a very simple view. We say, if it would have cost you $500,000 to put back that house, including code upgrades, that's what they owe you. And they don't get to make some deduction for the land. You can spend $500,000 on a house, including the land. But because it's a little bit unsettled, because the law hasn't been tested in court, some insurance companies are saying, they're basically inventing wording that doesn't exist in the policy and saying, well, that would result in, it's unfair because then you'd end up with two lots. You'd have your old lot and your new lot. And so they're sort of seizing on that. But we don't agree. And we think that if this issue does get challenged in court, policyholders will win. We think it's pretty clear. So we recommend pushing back. If your insurance company is one of the insurance companies that is trying to deduct land value from the home you're buying, and it seems like I want to say it's like 50-50. Some insurers are not trying to make a land value deduction, but some are. But we, number one, we say to push back, we say, where does it say in the policy that you get to deduct land value? They're not going to be able to show you that. And then you can make arguments.
Can I add something right there, Amy?
Yeah.
Because what I've been seeing, they've been writing back and saying, and giving them the part that says we do not insure land.
Okay.
Because they do not.
Right. But we're not saying that they owe you for the lot under your old house.
Right.
So
Right.
You're not asking them to insure the land. We're just saying, this is how much you would have owed to rebuild that house. It has nothing to do with the land underneath that house. And that same amount of money can be exported to the purchase, okay? So, and obviously when you buy a house, you buy the house and the land underneath it, right? It's included in the price. So we recommend you say, you explain again on logic. We're not asking for you to reimburse me for the cost of that land. We're asking you to just reimburse for the cost of what it would cost to replace the home, okay? And then there's an argument, which we're gonna illustrate for you in a second. The logic also is, if the house that you had would cost $500,000 to rebuild, okay, separate from the value of the lot underneath it, then if you take that $500,000 and buy a house, then there's an argument that you're actually buying lesser value house, because this $500,000 house, it didn't include the land underneath. That's an additional value. This one, the house is valued at $500,000, including the land. So arguably, it comes out the same. That is the logic we suggest that people use. And that the new home, including the land, is the same price. It's not a windfall because it evens out. But because this dispute is still going back and forth with some insurers and their customers, there is legislation pending that would further clarify it. This is an illustration to show you. Here's your old house with the land underneath, okay? You bought the structure and the land. There's my $500,000 example. You're not talking about the value of the land, just the value of the house, right? Well, we'll reduce
400, yeah.
We'll go from 500 to 400,000. Let's just say the house is worth 400,000. Then the replacement cost is 400,000. Okay. You decide to buy elsewhere. You should have 400,000 to buy that house, and the insurer should not get to deduct. And again, we say that it's apples to apples. Okay, that it's not putting you in a better position, because as I said, in a way, the new house is worth less because it includes the land, while this one does not include the land. Okay, so again, we're saying it's the same. They're about the same. Okay, and this is just logic. It's not a little bit of math. Back to you, Sandy.
Okay. One of the things I want to add, because Frank just asked a question there, I think it was Frank, about being told about some of these things. One person wrote and said, hey, I didn't know I could take my code upgrade coverage and move it into my new house, so I didn't factor it in because they never told me I could. Let me know. I can send you the language. It's in the California Fair Claims Settlement Practices Act, that your insurance company has the duty to disclose at the beginning of the claim all of your policy coverages, benefits, and limits. One of the other things we've seen is that people have been going and buying a house, getting into escrow to replace a house, and all of a sudden the adjuster says, oh, okay, well, when you're done, let us know and we'll deduct the land and do this and that. They're not hearing about the land value deduction, some cases, until it's already too late. That is another argument you can use that is in the fair. I didn't put it in here because it's just recently come up, but if they haven't told you about that limitation straight out, I think that, there's some argument that they might have waived it. So let me know if you're having that problem. These are the common issues, and people ask me these all the time. When you write to your adjuster, if you have a question, they have 15 days to respond. And that's to phone calls, letters, and emails. We always recommend emails. You have a paper trail. Make sure if they haven't written you back, write to them and remind them that they have 15 days to respond. When you turn in, say, a bill or an estimate for reimbursement, they have 40 days to pay it or deny it, okay? If they're not able to, they have to send you a letter. And you guys have probably seen these letters that they send. They're, in my opinion, inadequate, because they send a letter saying, we're still looking at your claim and, you know, we'll let you know. They need to tell you what they need in order to make that decision, how long they need to make that decision, and they need to send a letter every 30 days with that same information. They can't just say, we're still looking at it. And one of the things that I usually recommend after you get one of those letters is, gee, it seems like you have everything that you need to make this decision. Is there something I can provide you that would help you get to that faster? Because in most times you've turned it in, okay? Go.
All right. So what are the best practices? You've heard and you know by now that this process is not nearly as black and white as the adjuster may lead you to think. You know, that not everything the adjuster may tell you is completely accurate, because, for example, it actually may not be as clear as they're saying. They're saying, oh, you know, we don't know code upgrades unless you actually incurred them. And we know that the law is that they do owe them, even if you haven't incurred them in 2051. But again, because a lot of adjusters, they have basic training and they may not really know that much about California law. They are supposed to. Sometimes you've got to really be that squeaky wheel that knows your rights and reminds them that you know your rights. So you've probably heard, if you've been to any of our webinars or been to any of our workshops or been on our website, you know, we emphasize over and over how important a paper trail is, how important it is that you make clear requests to the insurance adjuster and the company as to what you are asking for, why you're entitled to it, and that you put these things in writing. And with things like, you know, land value, code upgrades, and you know, trying to reach a settlement, you know, it's always helpful that the insurance company see you as a reasonable person that knows what you're talking about, and that you're not making crazy demands on them, which means, you know, keep it professional. Be concise and to the point. You know, they don't need to know a whole lot of details about your life other than that you are doing your best to recover from a devastating experience, and that you are intent on getting the full value of the insurance policy that you paid for. So you want to be concise and to the point when you communicate. You want to bold or bullet point your requests. Avoid sending, you know, long 4-page letters that are single spaced, because adjusters have, probably most of them, too many claims on their plate anyway, and so they're not going to read it, and they're gonna you know, push it off, and it's better to just keep it short and sweet if you can. Use proper grammar and punctuation so they know you're a force to be reckoned with. Promptly respond to their letters and their reasonable requests for information, so that you're constantly putting the ball back in their court. You're cooperating. You've given them the information they need to make decisions and to keep processing your claim and moving things along. And avoid venting frustrations and emotions to your adjuster. You know, they didn't burn your house down. They may be making your life more difficult than it needs to be, and you're human, so it's hard to stay polite all the time. If you feel like an adjuster is giving you a hard time, making your life more difficult, but really try to keep things professional as much as you can. We are here for you. United Policyholders has an extensive library. We are 24/7 help on the web. Here's our website. You can see the link to the publication called Buy or Rebuild. There's a lot of history for the topics we've been talking about today, these very common sources of dispute between insurers and insureds, of how much they owe you and when. So what we've distilled it down for you to try to really give you the straight scoop. And so again, our website is there for you whenever you need it. So is the Department of Insurance. They have a toll-free number where you can call, you can file a complaint, which they call a request for assistance. You can also file that online. And you know, we really encourage pretty much anyone who's having trouble with an insurance claim to weigh in with the department and make your voice heard, file a complaint. And you know, a lot of people worry about doing that because they think, oh, well, then, you know, I'm going to piss off my insurance company. They're going to treat me worse. And, you know, that really is, that's not legal if they do that, but it's generally not true, because I think what happens is, you know, the insurance companies are legally required to respond to the Department of Insurance. They want to keep a better record with the department because the department has a lot of power over them. The department can grant their rate increases or deny their rate increases. And so they want, you know, they don't want to get, they don't want to have demerits. They don't want to have strikes against them. So if they can solve your problem, if you filed a complaint with the department and the insurance company can address it, they definitely will. But we don't, you know, we just keep your expectations modest, because the department's not going to give you a free lawyer or be really your advocate so much as they will try to help solve issues that they can. So we've got a couple of upcoming events: how to survive the home insurance crisis. I'm going to be doing a webinar on September 3rd. We're going to have somebody from the Department of Insurance, and we're going to have somebody from the California Fair Plan. For most of you, this is probably one problem that you don't have to worry about right now, meaning you are protected from getting dropped, non-renewed by your insurance company because you are a disaster survivor. But if you get into year 3 after your loss, you are no longer protected. You may need this kind of help, but just know again that we are here to give you the information you need to make your insurance policy work for you, the investment that you made in buying insurance. We're here to help you know your rights and enforce them. So if you don't need this webinar now, you may need it next year, and we will have that recording available to you.
Okay, we just wanted to make you guys aware of some of the previous webinars that we've done, that if you, if we hit on this topic and you're not quite there yet, you can go back and write to us at info@uphelp.org, and we'll send you a link. These are all on YouTube, but they are, we do keep them private, only for survivors, because people steal our stuff. We have one on underinsurance, remedies for underinsurance and how to deal with that very difficult situation. Resolving reconstruction pricing disputes, that's a long one, but there's a lot of really nitty-gritty information in there. About correcting your insurer's estimate and reconciling it with your contractor's estimate. And then finally, we have one on maximizing loss of use and ALE coverage. So if you are interested in watching any or all of those, just send Carolyn a request at info@uphelp.org. The other thing that I wanted to add before Amy goes into thanking our partners is that there are some class actions starting to form on the land value issue. I know that you know, they're just at the beginning, but I know CSAA is having a case. So you might end up getting notice about that through the other channels. So kind of.
So just to pick up on what Sandy said, you know, United Policyholders does a lot with a little. You know, people say we're small but mighty. You know, we don't just educate and inform, we advocate. So when Sandy talks about, you know, a class action suit, that's because when there's an issue that is making it hard for people to recover from a disaster, you know, we try to solve that issue. So because some insurers are taking this position that they don't owe for the land under the home that you're purchasing, or they don't owe your full benefits because you're not rebuilding. Sometimes the only way to resolve those is to file a lawsuit and change the law. So when we know that there may need to be a change in the law, we will either go to the legislature or we will help connect people with qualified professionals. And again, with insurance, it's really, if you're going to go to a lawyer, you want to go to the right lawyer. And when I say the right lawyer, I mean, you want to go to the lawyer that knows insurance and has done battle with an insurance company in court, because insurance companies are very good at litigation. They're in court all the time. There you have lots and lots of lawyers, and they're very sophisticated in the way that they approach litigation. And so we feel it's very important that for those of you who decide that you have hit a wall, you cannot resolve it through negotiation, the Department of Insurance hasn't helped you, and you have nowhere else to go but to a lawyer, we really want to remind you how important it is that you go to a lawyer that really can go toe-to-toe with a sophisticated insurance company. And yes, one way to find them, as Sandy mentioned earlier, is our Find Help directory. But also you can communicate with us, because we're talking to those lawyers on a regular basis. Because of course, in our effort to advocate for you, we want to make sure that that your advocates are strong too. And so, we may be going to the legislature, we may be filing a friend of the court brief, but we maintain good relationships with the lawyers that really care, as we do, about insurance fairness. So as Sandy said, we are talking to, we know, for example, on the land value issue, that it's probably not going to get resolved until there's a lawsuit. So it is in our interest as an organization to help you, find a lawyer that's really going to win for you. And there's never a sure bet, but it's always, you increase your odds of getting a good outcome when you really pick a lawyer carefully. And we know it's scary to think about filing a lawsuit, and it's not something we of course encourage or recommend on top of everything else that you have had to go through. But if there's a good amount of money on the line, it's definitely something to think about. And we're here to help you with that as well. We have lots of information on the website about hiring a lawyer on contingency fee and how to find the right lawyer and all that kind of thing. So I want to thank our funders and our partners, the Center for Disaster Philanthropy, the California Community Foundation, North Valley Community Foundation, the Butte Strong Fund, programs like this to you. So I want to really thank Sandy. I want to thank our team at United Policyholders for all of the hard work that goes into bringing you this information. Thank all of you for your time and your grit. We're rooting for your recoveries. And I don't know, Sandy, do we have time now for questions?
Yeah, we can answer a question or two. And I also, and I say this with the fact that I am way backed up in my emails and I owe a lot of people a lot of emails. But if you have one of these issues, send me an email, sandy@uphelp.org. And, like Amy was saying, the land value, we're probably not going to be able to do much more than try to get you hooked up with somebody maybe that can help you. There's some issues with coverage limits. Sometimes people are talking about land value and they're hitting coverage limits, so it kind of becomes moot. So there's a lot of little esoteric things that we can help you with. So that's that. And does anybody have any questions? We don't have any pending right now. Sorry, my computer's about ready to.
All right, so I think we're going to wrap up, and I hope you all have a nice evening, and we do appreciate you tuning in and being with us.
Great.
Good evening.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Good night.